Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We are just going to give a couple more minutes for people to get off their last meetings and so forth. So just hang tight with us and we'll be right with you. All right. Well, we do have a huge amount of people already checked in, so I think we'll just get started. Thank you all for joining today. This is the Elevate Your IT Operations with Bacon Unlimited 4.5. So essentially, this is all about 4.5, which is being released in the next couple of weeks. So it's basically ready. We're using it internally as well as some other pilot folks. And this is essentially what Bacon is up to. So we've got a lot of exciting things to cover today. And in the interest of time, we'll kind of move quickly through the opening items here. So let's just do quick introductions. We've got a slide here to kind of make that visual for those who care. I'm John Marcato. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Bacon. And joining me today is Dave Adekoya, the single greatest demo guy I know, and also one of our senior engineers and super brains. So thanks for joining me, Dave. Uh-oh, we might have an audio check on Dave.
Sorry
Oh,
about that. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I just called you one of the greatest technical people, and the mute button doesn't work for you, so very challenging. All right, so let's keep moving through here so we can get past the beginning stuff and talk a little bit about some of the uh, um, other information. So housekeeping items here. We've got t-shirts for you for those who stay and fill out our poll at the end. We really appreciate that. It helps us do a much better job on webinars, or at least that's what we hope for. And also, I will also say at this point to please use the questions feature if you haven't used GoToMeeting before. It does have a pretty easy to use little question feature in the little bar there. So just hit that little arrow and ask away as we go through. We will have people live answering questions, and we may be able to integrate some of the stuff into the content. So please do that if you can. And the polls are huge. Those t-shirts are so soft, so you'll be really happy with that. Also, if you don't get every answer that you want today and you just want to explore more about Bacon, we do have a very rich YouTube portal. So if you want to go search Bacon Unlimited, you'll find our YouTube channel. We have our Bacon Bits videos up there. There's some 120 or 110 or something like that. It's got lots and lots of stuff that you can search through. Lots of short videos that help with specific how-tos, and then also some like a short, like 7-minute demo that gives a general overview. So pretty handy. After that, Dave, you can advance there. We'll just talk a little bit about what Bacon is for those who maybe aren't familiar, and then why you should use it. Basically, what Bacon is an endpoint management platform It's a security first cross-platform system. So what does that really mean? It means it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. We have added MDM capabilities too to enhance our Mac management capabilities. And in so doing, we also added the ability to manage Apple mobile devices such as iPhones, iPads, and Apple TVs. In the future, we will add Android, but we don't have it yet. We get that question a lot. So I'll just tell you up front. The platform was designed to have a very intuitive interface. It was designed the ground up with all of the capabilities thought out. So it doesn't look like it was a lot of different things stuck together, and that means that all the pages are very contiguous and it's really easy to understand. Most people don't even need the admin guide to learn 80+% of it. Its intention is to help desk people, sysadmins, system architects really understand what's going on in all of their servers, workstations, laptops, and as I said, mobile devices, and be able to do really, really important things with that information. So that can include patching. Now with this version, really advanced automatic third-party patching, which we're going to show off a little today. It allows you to do custom scripting, and it allows you to control essentially every aspect of the system in an automated way. So think any setting that you would imagine on a Windows, Mac, or Linux machine, being able to control it in a way that not only puts it in the state that you want it in, but monitors that so you know if you're in and out of compliance. It can be very, very helpful for security, but can actually just be helpful for keeping systems productive and functional and not wasting a lot of your time. So that's kind of the big goal with it. So that's kind of what it is. Dave, maybe just advance a slide there and we'll talk a little bit about why. I think the biggest reason is not necessarily just in the features. Of course, if you need to do what we do with our features, that's going to be the reason why you would get it to some degree. But I think the reason why, as maybe opposed to using something else, is that there are two major factors that differentiate Bacon. One, it's an ultra modern platform, right? So it was designed in the last 6 years. And what we've seen is that platforms that are on the market that do some similar things are all much, much older. And when you're talking about coding a platform like this, 10 years, 15, 20, 25 years is a lifetime in software development. So if you've heard terms like post Web 2.0 or Web 3 or things like that, this is more of that kind of modern era where the things we built it out of are the really common things that are used throughout all web applications that are now sort of built in the modern world in the sort of modern cloud age. So that's one big advantage. It just makes it a lot faster to add new capabilities, to keep it secure, and to really like fix things and change things to adapt to what businesses need. So that's one reason. And the other reason is that our support team is a very, very involved support team. So as opposed to some pieces of software I've used where, they'll help you if there's a bug. Sometimes it takes a long time on that. Bacon was designed to have people who will not just get involved with fixing bugs, but also with solving problems in your environment that are related to using the tool. So sometimes you need to write a particular script or something like that, and we'll actually spend time with you helping you get all of those things accomplished. So Bacon's a very rich experience, I think, both from a modern perspective as well as from a support perspective. So there's a lot of things you can do with Bacon. We're going to get into some of the new ones today first. We're going to do some things that are a little out of order, only because usually what we do is give an overview of the UI and kind of go through that. We're going to do that actually after we introduce the new features. So if you haven't seen Bacon before, just hold your hat. You'll get more familiarized with the totality of what it does after we go through some of the new things. So it's a little bit of a mix-up for us. This is just an example of some of our customers. You may recognize some that maybe are in your industry and give some sense for all the variation of different sizes of companies and different variations of what they do. And we're able to help all of these different companies and many more solve problems. So with that, I think we'll ask a couple of poll questions. That'll just help us steer the conversation a little bit. So, Lane, if you wouldn't mind, why don't we launch the first poll? All right, a nice easy one for all of you, but we'd like to know if people are using all the different operating systems, or it's a strong, just kind of Windows only crowd. So fill that out for us, and as that comes in, we'll just give a few moments here for people to get it in. It's usually a majority Windows, but the question is always how much percentage of other things are people using. So I'm noticing higher than usual Mac OS, with about 98% of the crowd here using Windows, and 62% also using Mac OS, 44% using Linux, and 46 on iOS. So this is a very varied crowd. That is really interesting. And so we'll be closing that poll in just a second, but thanks for filling that out. That's really, really helpful. Lane, if you wouldn't mind launching the second poll, we'll just get through both of them, and then we'll move on here to the good stuff. All right, which of the features are you most excited about seeing today? Well, we're going to be talking about all of these, but we're definitely really interested to know what you're interested in. So I had a little bit of a prediction on this, and so far it's coming true based on what I'm seeing. I see a screen that maybe I don't think the general populace is seeing, but it's showing me the calculations that we all see at the end here. But a strong, heavy weight on third-party patching. So we will be really, really focusing on that. All right, so there you go. Third-party patching is by far the biggest. Single sign-on, second, AI chatbot, less so, and then the Apple volume purchase plan. So with that, we've got a lot to talk about. So Dave, why don't we break right into it and start talking about the new features?
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so starting with our new features, we're going to start a little bit different than usual, where rather than having the screen actually up, we're going to log into Bacon. So one of the new features we've added is the ability to incorporate SSO through either Azure or Okta. In our case, we're using Azure. So here on our new login screen, you'll see we have the traditional Bacon login. This is for people who have accounts already in the system. We have LDAP support. On this, we've also added LDAP S, so that's pretty nice as well. And then we have SSO. So here I can click login. I'm actually going to just log in live here. This is going to bring us to a Microsoft screen. I already have my creds in here. I'll grab my password off screen. And do some two-factor, as is tradition. And so we can see with that, I'm going to use my Microsoft creds to log in to Bacon. Since it's as easy as setting up an enterprise app in Azure, then copying over the required information into Bacon, and I assume something similar for Okta as well. We'll have documentation, of course, in our admin guide, so you can get that set up whenever you're ready. Next up, for the new features, let's take a look at Apple VPP. So if I go over here to software and Apple VPP, this allows you to now manage software assets that have been assigned in your Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager. So here we can see we have various numbers of assets. If we take a look at Slack for desktop here, we're able to link back to iTunes, and then we can see what licenses have been assigned between our devices or between our users. And so from the previous screen, we're able to actually go through here. You can just go to Actions and then manage your licenses this way, or just install directly on either a device or for, again, assigning to a user. So just like another feature we've added to the MDM side of Bacon to make it easy to now deploy applications in your environment. Next up, another app focus we have is third-party patching. That's over in repository and managed packages. So prior to this feature, we were able to update different applications as they got new versions, but it was a manual process. You'd have to know, let's say, one password was updated, add the new exe to your repository, then push it out. With this feature, we're actually able to track this, and so we can always add the newest version of one password in this case. All we have to do is find an app in this list, go over to manage, and then it's going to copy it, the latest executable, or the latest installer, I should say, into your file repository here. So this 1Password setup is now in my file repo, and Bacon's going to keep it up to date. So if I click here, we can get some information about the vendor themselves. So we see the actual website we're pulling it from, as well as any install or uninstall arguments we may need. Now on this, right now we have a limited set of software, but we do have a process to get new software in the system. John, you kind of want to give a quick explanation how that works?
Yeah, actually, I think this is a good moment to talk about sort of how we do this and why our system is different than other third-party patching that's out there. Essentially, we've come up with a list of software that's the most common, but we know that people will have apps that are available in public repositories that they'll want to add to this list. And in order to do it correctly, I'd love it if you could just, enter the name in and it would just start working right away. But our commitment to security requires that we go through a little bit more work than that. Essentially, what you'll do is put in a request to get your app added. And the good news is we can turn that around very quickly, like usually within a day or two. And the reason for that is that actually we use artificial intelligence, a system that we wrote along with some advanced scraping technologies to essentially find the repositories for different systems. We always want to be downloading using an official repository that is approved by the manufacturer, not just to randomly scraping the internet or something, because you could end up with all manner of different malware. And we've seen some problems there. There are actually tools out there that do some odd things with where they get packages, and I certainly would not trust them and would not recommend trusting them. So in our system, we're able to use a combined artificial intelligence and human intelligence combination where we essentially use a unified method to go find the software. Then we approve that by an end user and ensure that the hashes match and that the pull is coming from a place that is trusted by the manufacturer themselves. So that's kind of the main thing that we're doing there. And that's why we're going to be able to add countless apps, whatever you need beyond what our basic list is.
Excellent. And then finally, for our last feature that we can visibly show, got two more after that, we have our chat BLT feature. So John, once again, if you want to take it away, kind of give us an explanation on what chat BLT is and why it's going to be helpful.
Well, sure. So I probably could have just run right through there since we are still talking about AI. So chat BLT, as the name might kind of give away, uses the GPT backend system. So we are a business customer of GPT. We have a centralized service that is a protected relay between it's not ChatGPT per se, but it's the GPT engine, the back end of that, the model, if you will. And essentially, we've trained it with our own information. We're using some advanced tools to do that essentially use our own corpus of data along with the already trained GPT engine. And between the combination of the two, we actually get all the benefits of ChatGPT, but we get it in the framework of answering questions about Bacon. So it's trained in our admin guide and other documents that we produce. We'll probably continue to train it on more things, and this will advance over time. I do want to note that this is what we call a preview feature. The rest of the features you're seeing are going to be fully supported, and you will be able to expect them to behave a certain way. I do want to bring up and be very honest that with something like Chat BLT, there's a lot changing very, very rapidly in the world of these models. And while it already adds a lot of value today, you'll get a random answer where it makes a small mistake. You may have heard that in the news. It's called hallucination. It's not a human hallucination. It's just the model mispredicting a particular word or phrase or concept a little bit. But almost always it does a pretty perfect job. And it can be a lot faster to ask this information than to ask the admin guide. So Dave's going to give you a little example of that. I don't know if you want to throw in a question there, Dave, and maybe we'll see it hallucinate, or maybe we'll see it give us a perfect answer. Okay, what is Bacon used for? And the other thing about using GPT is that The API, sometimes it responds in 1 or 2 seconds, and sometimes it takes 10 seconds. And you just kind of have to live with it because they're experiencing huge amounts of volume to this API at this point. So I still find it's faster than going to the admin guide, but nonetheless, you might notice some slight variations in the speed. So Bacon is primarily used as a secure communications and collaboration platform for teams and organizations. It allows users to send messages. Perfect example of something that is absolutely not correct. This is I'm surprised it hallucinated that much, Dave, but I'm almost glad that it did. It proved me right. Maybe ask it
Fascinating for
another,
you.
yeah, ask another one, and I'll bet it'll come up really good. It's just so strange how it will do that. What things can you deploy using the repository? Good question. And specific too. I do find
I
that
made a
some of the
typo in there
specific
actually.
ones.
Let's see if it can put that back together.
What's that, Dave?
So I made a bit of a typo in there when I was typing it out, but
Oh
we'll see
yeah.
if it can kind of find and
Usually
replace.
pretty good at overcoming the typos. That's sort of built into the GPT engine. But that first hallucination there is an amazing one. I haven't probably in a week haven't seen one that is that bold. So
Yeah,
a
it's
lot of
definitely
people
new.
find it. To deploy using the repository, you can add files or bundles that you want to deploy to the repository. That is true. This can include fonts, updates, license files, data installation files, etc. All true. You can specify the destination folders for the files or bundles within the repository. Still true. From the main dashboard, you can select the groups and or endpoints where you want to deploy the files or bundles. Also true. The files and bundles will be deployed to the selected groups and endpoints quickly. Depending on network configuration and other factors, you can monitor the deployment progress and view the results in the job log. All of that is true. And one of the things I want to note about this is that it's conversational, just like for anybody who's used ChatGPT. So if you see something that seems odd, you can actually say, oh, that's not what I understood. And often it'll go, oh, you're right. I got that wrong. And actually it's this. And so it's very funny that way. Although I must say it's a little unusual that we saw a hallucination that bold with that first answer. But I think that the rest of it on the second question was really good. So in addition to being able to chat with it, one of the really interesting things you can actually do with ChatGPT, but you can do in a more specified way with ChatBLT here in Bacon, is you can ask it to create you states and scripts. So if you want to make something like a PowerShell script or something, Dave, I don't know if you have an example of a really simple one just to kind of show that off. The one thing that we're adding that hasn't been added just yet, but probably over the next couple of weeks is just put in something like how do you create, I don't know, a file. But what's a script, a PowerShell script that creates a file? It'll probably come up with something good. What it doesn't have yet, if you have used ChatGPT, is the code block that you can copy from. That should be in there in the next couple of weeks. So that's just the kind of thing that is kind of in progress right now. And that's the thing with preview features. We're going to be adding a lot of capabilities to this, a lot of things that you can do in the software. You'll be able to actually have the AI help a lot more. And so as you can see, here's the command: new item dash item type file dash path, see your file name text. That's perfect, right? Nothing hallucinated there. A really smart answer. And in the very near future, you'll see that command actually in a separate block with a little copy command on it. So you could grab it and put it somewhere. And in about a month and a half or so, you'll actually be able to click a button that'll save that directly to the repository so that it's just a quick auto save function. So it's moving right along. It's very exciting. And AI has become a really essential part of a lot of our back end tools. And so we wanted to bring some of that capability into the front end for end users of Bacon as well. So Dave's got more exciting questions here. Let's see. What is that one?
Go
What
on
is
from chat. I'm going to try out. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
it's from Craig, I think.
What is the IP address of a computer? Ooh, that's such a deep question. Let's see how smart it is. The IP address of a computer is a unique string of numbers and/or letters that is used to identify a computer on a network. It is like a postal address for your computer. However, I'm unable to provide the specific IP address of a computer as I don't have access to that information. That's a great and accurate answer. I love seeing that. So that's a really good one. Thanks for whoever posted that to the chat. Happy to. I promise he's not a ringer. We didn't put him there. We actually wanted to ask this stuff at random because we wanted to see show people how it really works and explain kind of a little bit how it quote unquote thinks. So it's a really interesting bit of technology for those who haven't looked into large language model artificial intelligence, but it's
Mhm.
there's going to be a lot of promise coming with that, and we certainly want to be ahead of the curve taking advantage of it. All right, what do we got next, Dave?
Before we go too far, actually, Ron was asking if we're going to have BLT trained to make salt scripts, or in this case, I guess salt states.
Oh, yes, of course. In fact, it can mostly already do it, but it doesn't look really good without the code blocks. So look out for some videos coming out on that in the next 2 to 3 weeks on our Bacon Bits channel in YouTube. And if you also want to do a demo on it, we'll be starting to show that in demos probably in the next, depending exactly when we get it ready, maybe 1 to 3 weeks or something like that. But yeah, great question. It's
Awesome.
actually the one of the main reasons we made this was to do that. Is as cool as it is to be able to ask the system on how things work, I think being able to make states is actually one of the most valuable things. And like the scripts, you'll have a button in about a month and a half where you just click on it and it will save directly into the states directory, which is under profiles. So for those who know Bacon, they know profiles and states. Dave could probably just click on that little profiles button over there and just show you where the states live. And soon you'll be able to just click on a button and so when you're using ChatBLT and they'll just save
Yeah,
right
for
in there.
sure. Mhm.
Great.
So we have like profiles and states right over here.
Yeah. And it would just show up right in states and you'll be ready to use it. So
Hmm.
for anybody who's written a state, they know sometimes they can be a little bit confusing. So it's never a bad idea to get some help from uh, the the AI to get you started in the right direction or maybe solve it on the first try. I
Yeah,
found
it's an
that
excellent tool.
for simple states, right, Dave? If you're using Chat GPT, it usually will get it on the maybe the first or second try. And if it's much more complex, you might have to give it more better prompt information or maybe take several tries at it. But it's pretty amazing in how much time it can save. And
Oh
adding
yeah, for
that
sure. Like a
into
little bit of
the
a collaboration with it, right? But it types faster than I do, so I end up using it a lot of times just to save the effort.
Yeah, I think too that, you know, the ability for us to train and use some tools that there's some middleware tools that can do some advanced prompting against the GPT API that will allow us to make much more accurate states than just GPT by itself over time. And that's one of the main objectives of building this.
Fair enough. I was trying to get one more question out, but it looks like the back end dropped, so that's beta for you. Alrighty. Well, with that, we've kind of covered most of the visual new features. Some other things to keep in mind are we're always trying to improve the product. So one thing that we've improved in the latest version of Bacon is our Windows software uninstallation process. Microsoft kind of moves the goalposts here and there, and uninstalling software in Windows, as I'm sure most of you try to automate, it's a bit of a wild west. So we've kind of improved our method of trying to automatically detect uninstall strings. So that'll be available for everybody who's joining us. It's already a client that'll come out in 4.5. In addition, like I mentioned earlier, we added LDAP S support in addition to just standard LDAP, and that'll be available for you to set up as well. So with that, I think we can actually move over to the standard demo overview. A little bit shorter than usual, but we can get started. Sound good?
Sounds great, Dave. Thanks.
All right, so for that, I'm going to switch back to my standard demo environment. We're going to walk down the nav bar on the left-hand side and kind of go over just some general features of Bacon. So right now we're on the overview page. This gives you just a quick idea of what's happening in your environment. So up here in the top left, I have alerts. These are things you can custom configure for if services are running, if machines are offline. Then we have profile alerts. A good way to think about these are sort of like an audit for your configurations. So you're able to push out different configs, let's say setting registry keys, configuring firewalls, installing software. But there are certain configurations we want to make sure that are in place and we can prove it to our boss, to auditors for compliance, etc. And so that's what this profile alert is for. You can set up a configuration, and then when Bacon finds that configuration not met, even though it's going to go ahead and set it, it's also going to trigger an alert for you to say, hey, your front office PCs didn't have all the USB removable drive access disabled, or this specific one didn't. Go take a look. It's going to be very handy and also good to have on this page. Next up, we have our endpoint indicator. This is going to show you which of your endpoints are connected versus disconnected. We've added another indicator for warning, which usually means that we have difficulty pulling back data from the machine, but we know it's online. 9 times out of 10, these are going to self-heal on their own, but if it does persist, you just reinstall the agent and you're good to go. Next up, we have distribution. It shows you which operating systems you're running in your environment. Then we have patches, which will show you the available patches by operating system. And keep in mind, with these different indicators, when we click on them, they're able to drill down, and so we can see what this table is actually built off of or what that information came from. Next up, we have antivirus protection. This here is actually a pretty nice one. This allows you to select your own AV services in the system, and will tell you that they're actually on a machine and running. So let's say that you have Sentinel-1, to throw out a random one there, and you make an acquisition currently using CrowdStrike. Rather than having to either hope that we have it in our list of already added AV to the product, or you have to switch to whoever's got the larger client base, you can actually just add that extra service as part of your monitor here, and then make sure that all your devices are protected regardless of the AV that they're currently running. And then next up, for another security-focused one, encrypted hard drives. Bacon's able to look at your devices and detect either Windows BitLocker for that OS or Mac OS File Vault and report back as such using this metric. So next up, we'll take a quick peek at the monitor. So here where you can configure your rules. So we have different ones here, so as an example, and those will trigger alerts in this table, right? And so you can go through here. These alerts can either be output to email, or you can actually do direct API integration with Autotask and with Jira. So if you're using those systems, we can both open and close tickets. Next up, we have a knock dashboard, just a quick visual indicator of the health of your environment. In my lab environment here, most of these are offline, but you can kind of get an idea of what your environment looks like at a glance. And then these are also interactive. So if I click on my demo Win 10 here, it's going to lead me to that endpoint detail page. But before we go through that, let's take a look at the endpoint table as a whole. So here, we're going to have a lot of different data points being pulled back from Bacon, things like IP address, serial number. If it does or doesn't need a reboot, maybe you've pushed some updates to the machine, right? And we also have search and filter. So this is going to interact with those columns we saw. So we're able to type in part of an IP address, and it's going to start filtering our table like that. Or we could type in maybe like the name of a current logged in user or a host name, and it's going to filter as need be there. For more complex searches, we can actually use the real filters up here, and we can add as many of these as we'd like. So I can filter by OS platform. Let's say Windows. And I'll say for everybody who's currently online. So I'll do a status not equal to disconnected. And so it's going to filter my table this way. Now, in Bacon, there's 2 different ways to kind of organize your endpoints. We can group this collection of endpoints with these filters together using a dynamic group. What that'll do is every time a machine meets this specification, in this case is running Windows and is not disconnected, it's going to join the dynamic group I create here. This could be something like online Windows endpoints, right? Pretty useful if you're pushing out software to online Windows endpoints. We can also do static groups, and those are done through our group UI over here, where you're able to just go through, select some endpoints, let's say like a testing group, and we don't want it to change at all. So we can just select the endpoints manually and put them in a group like that. So before we go on too far, let's take a look at what one of these endpoints looks like once we drill down into it. So here we can see we have 8 different tiles up top, and as we click these, it's going to change the context displayed below. On the system tile, we can see we have tags on the right-hand side along with performance information and notes. The tags can be filtered and searched on that endpoint table we saw before. And then all these notes that we're saving here will be available to everybody else who looks at this machine from the admin view as well. On the left-hand side, we have some similar information to what we saw in the endpoints table, but it gets more in depth where now we can see CPU model, we can see the available RAM capacity, and also the RAM in use, right? And then as we go through these cards, we just get more hardware information. So here we can see drives. If I had BitLocker deployed on this Windows machine, we'd get a recovery key over here that I could pull. We can see the available network adapters. So this could be either like VPN adapters, in this case, a virtual adapter, but physical to the machine, Wi-Fi cards, all that good stuff here. In profiles, we can see what profiles have been assigned. Again, remember, these are kind of like GPOs, excuse me, where we can either send down different configurations or install software. Then we can see what groups this device is a member of, and it's going to track both the dynamic groups that we talked about just a moment ago and the static groups where someone randomly, or excuse me, manually assigned this machine to that group. Next up for available patches, I'll cover how patching works in just a little bit once we get down there. Just keep in mind we can patch individual endpoints using the same process as we would use to patch thousands of endpoints. Over in services, we can see what's running on the machine with the option to start or stop these services. And like I said earlier, we're able to mark these services as antivirus. So if I actually filter my table here by services marked as AV, we can see we have Windows Defender, which we know is AV, and Windows Search, which we all know is not. Again, this is that flexible, so we can mark any service as AV, so you never have to worry about whatever flavor of AV you're using not being recognized by the system. We can always go in here and just manually select these, and then it'll apply product-wide. Then lastly, over here, we have logs. This will show you everything that this machine was involved in from a Bacon standpoint. So maybe we're pushing out profiles or patching, right? That'll be available in the logs. And if the job was successful or if it failed, in this case, I think the machine was offline, so it failed. Then let's go over to our remote control. So up here, we have our screen shell and file system remote. And how this works is we have the option of either having the remote control always running, or we can do an on-demand feature here where we have to manually toggle it and then have the remote services start. So down here we have always on demand, always off. In addition here, we have different options for updating the system data. So if we're missing anything, we can do updates here. I'm just going to give us a couple seconds here to load up the remote. I forgot I turned it off earlier. I would have turned it on ahead of time if I'd remembered. There we go. So let's take a look at the screen remote. So here you can see we have the actual screen remote. I think for most of us in IT, we're not going to be too wowed by a screen remote, right? It's going to let you interact with the screen the user is currently on. If we've got multiple monitors, we have support for that as well. And we have some feature comforts for rotating the screen or changing the scaling type to match different resolutions. As always, we have different keyboard shortcuts down here that we can send to the machine, Control Up Delete, Windows key L, as well as the ability to either capture or push to the clipboard, or even just typing text onto the screen like that. And then it'll just pass those characters over to the machine. From there, we also have a user chat feature in the bottom right. So if I open this, it'll spawn a new tab for me, and it'll pop up a tab for the user, so we can chat back and forth even before we connect if necessary. Next up, we have a shell remote. This is one of my favorites. This allows you to get into the backend shell. So whereas the screen remote is very visible, gives the user a toast notification and a bar up top to kind of cancel the remote session, the shell and the file system remotes are completely invisible to the user. So here I can actually open up PowerShell, again, run my standard get date. I'll make it a variable, push back that variable, and you can see it's a full shell. It's not just sending one command out and then giving you the result. It's a persistent session. So you can run things like DISM or SFC in there, and that's going to allow you to see those faux GUI, see the loading bars, and all that kind of good stuff you would get if you were logged into the system directly. Then lastly, for our remote, we have the file system. So I'll connect here, and we're able to see the different disks on this machine and can pull up different directories and download files with a simple left click. The nice thing here is that the remote is part of your license in Bacon, so you have the option of either installing this as part of your standard agent install, or you can actually push these to machines individually. So just because you're using the agent doesn't mean you must use the remote, so ultimately you have that choice. As well as what we saw earlier, we have the option of the on-demand mode, where the service will actually be disabled until it receives instruction from the agent to turn on, as we saw earlier. And here, just giving me a warning, I have, I think, 10 minutes by default, and then I can just click this to reset that duration. So it'll auto turn itself off once I'm done here in a couple minutes. I see a question from Scott. How many agents can use the remote? Unlimited as far as I know. So we can actually have multiple people log into those remote sessions to collaborate and see what other people are looking at. That's actually one of my favorite features, the dude, look at this, or hey, can you take a look at this kind of thing that I think we're all pretty familiar with.
We've tested with 20. So it's probably more, but we've tested with 20.
Yep, so there you go. All right, so we finished off this guy over here. I'll stop torching that endpoint. So let's go over to software. Like we saw before, our software library is going to show you everything that we saw on the individual endpoint page. However, it's going to show it for all machines in Bacon. However, I may be having some kind of connection issue here. Let me see what's going on. Let's see if this will load a little bit better. Give me 1 second. I'm not sure what's going on there. Let me switch environments really quick. Give me 1 moment.
Did you lose your VPN over there, Dave?
Yeah, I'm checking on that right now. It says it's online. Just presenter's curse. Give me 1 sec. I'll switch gateways.
Okay.
It was going to happen eventually. We're usually so smooth with this one.
Yeah, usually this is the easy part. So sometimes in order to get to all of our stuff, we've got lots of security in the way, and no surprise, sometimes you get disconnected. So that is going to happen. While Dave's doing that, I see that we've answered all the questions. Does anybody else have any more questions while he's just checking on that? We love answering them, and so far they've been really good. This is actually, I think, maybe a record for how many people we've had answering question or asking questions. So
Yeah, they're
thanks
really
for that.
good.
Yeah, for everybody who has.
From Claudio, does display computer serial number? Yes, it does. So on the endpoints table, you're able to see the serial number. You can also export the entire table for inventory usage. That's regardless, of course, if the machine is offline or not. So we always have that information in there for you. You can also search for it.
All right, we got another one here. It looks like we got a bunch coming in. It's exciting. Is the text input with the screen share feature the only way to provide input? Can you click or not and type like RDP session?
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, yeah, so when I was demoing the remote, I think it was not easy to see because the text was so small. You can just type into that CLI normally like you would have if you were on the computer. So all of your keystrokes are taken into account, like, shift and like control kind of good stuff, as well as like click, left click, right click, all that kind of stuff. Sorry I didn't demo that a little bit clearer for you. And looks like my VPN is dead in the water. I'm sorry, guys. So unfortunately, I can't
Yeah,
get reconnected to the environment.
I'm seeing it the same. I think it's a problem with our VPN overall, Dave. So I think
Gotcha.
it's
Okay.
more of a global problem. So well, that's okay. We can use this time just to answer questions, which I don't mind doing at all. So when will all these new features go live in the platform? Oh, that's a great question. Within the next 2 weeks, we should be in release, but let's say 3 to be safe. I'll just answer these in text too for people who want to save them later. Let's see. Is the text input the screen share? Oh, this is the one you just answered. It looks like you might have just got your little world back here.
Yeah, I got to back up to the backup lane.
All right. Well, if you want to keep going, Dave, I will keep answering questions in the
For sure.
background.
So the last thing I'm going to cover, as I said, is going to like the installed software and services menus. These are going to work exactly the same as we saw before. The only difference is when we're looking from an overall Bacon standpoint, we can then see software for Mac OS, for iOS, good stuff like that. I also want to cover patching, right? That's usually pretty relevant to everybody. So over in patching, we're able to see the patches available on any of your machines. Again, that can be Linux machines, Mac OS, even like iPads. That software, those patches will show up in here too. So we covered third-party patching in the very start of it, but this is like your first-party patching, your OS level patching. And so through this UI, we're able to actually push out patches pretty simply, where we can select available patches, go over to install, and then we're able to select different schedule timeframes. So typically, John, I have you explain Relentless Mode if you want to go through that. But before so, we have install immediately. This will push it out to everybody who's currently online. Then we have run when connected, which is usually my preferred method. This pushes it out and then allows anybody who's offline to receive it once they log back in. We have schedule time, and then we have Relentless Mode, which allows a time frame. John, if you want to give like a quick how-to on this one, just to kind of wrap us up.
Yeah, no problem. So Relentless Mode was a customer idea. Boy, that's going back like 3 years now. But essentially, we had all the other features in there, and they said, well, we have these approved time windows, right, from management where we can have systems offline. So I really need not just a start date time, but an end time, where if I'm running a lot of patches and so forth, that it will start, but it will also definitely be done by a certain time. So that was kind of half of the question. The other question they had was, well, and also if I'm running a lot of patches, oftentimes there's multiple reboots, and I don't want to have to go back. I guess on their current system, the way they were explaining it, they could only run patches up until one reboot, and then they'd have to start a new job to be able to do any more patches. So Relentless Mode, and the part that really makes it relentless, is the fact that by default, it will patch all the patches that go together, reboot, continue patching. Now, this is only against the patches you've selected on the machines or groups of machines that you've selected, but nonetheless, it will patch and reboot, patch and reboot, patch and reboot. And all of that is based off of each operating system's built-in technology that we've studied in a great effort to understand exactly how their operating system works and is expected to patch along with their public patching system. So Windows Update and WSUS have certain sort of algorithmic connector to the WinWua system of Windows, and there's a COM API to work with that. We know that inside and out. Apple Update is similar. It's actually simpler in many ways, and the 8 or so flavors of Linux that we support are actually maybe the easiest parts because they're all built on a universal patch management system that does third-party and operating system patches. So it's really, really easy to work with them because they've really built those out. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, Dave.
Fantastic, thank you. Alrighty, so we've covered kind of the main features of Bacon. I'm sure there's a couple more we could go into, but usually demos kind of help us out a little bit there so you can get specific to your environment. Just to kind of round this off, so we've gone over what monitoring looks like, a little bit about endpoints in the remote. Lastly, be our repository. So we initially talked about it in terms of third-party patching, but the actual files and bundles repository is pretty self-explanatory. So here in files, we're able to upload individual files. Like you said before the third-party patching feature, we'd upload executables manually or MSIs. And then we can deploy these very simply. So I can select a file, go to deploy. I'll choose my platform as Windows, and I'm going to choose launcher here, which means it's going to drop the file on the machine and actually run it. And then from there, we can select any number of devices, add in any flags you might have. So for an MSI, we can do like a QN, all users equals 1, and then deploy that simply. So you try to keep things intuitive and simple in Bacon so you can kind of learn the workflow and then just fly through the product as you kind of see me doing, all while talking and looking through client questions and stuff like that. So I think, John, if we want to take the last 10 minutes to keep answering some questions, then we can kind of wrap from there.
Yeah, I think I'll keep answering these questions, but we probably are most interested, since there's only 10 minutes left, of giving people a little bit of time to fill out the survey. So what I would say to everybody is we will get the rest of these questions here answered real quickly, but then we want to leave some time for the survey. So I probably did us a little bit of a a challenge here by not getting to answer every question because I reminded everybody to keep asking questions with only about 5 minutes to go. So Adam and myself and others didn't get a chance to answer them all. However, we will let you know about them if we didn't get to answer you live in the session. But I'll see if I can answer a couple more of these before we go. And thank you, everyone, for doing this. Let's see. Overview page have a chart to show OS versions. We do have OS versions. It's not in the overview page, but it is on the endpoints page. And in the future, you'll be able to select that on the overview page as well. Activities are logged. What is our involvement in updating the server and the agents? You can have us do it all, or you can do it yourself. It is no charge to have us do it. Is licensing based on number of endpoints? It is. Number of endpoints and mobile devices, that's how we do the pricing. So you can talk to one of our salespeople. They'll tell you exactly where all the breaks are and if you do 1 year versus 3 year and all that kind of stuff. And you can use WSUS with this. It can run in place of WSUS. And it depends, Scott's question on WSUS. If you're in a dark site, a WSUS can be a good helper for this. We can host the updates themselves, but these are probably deeper architectural questions on exactly how you want to use it. A lot of people do tend to use WSUS just because of how it stores things, and it's really good at that, and it's free. Where is the documentation for covering the upgrade process? We have that in our guide, which is inside of the software itself. So we have a help area inside of Bacon. You can get all that information on how to do an upgrade. You can also talk to us on Discord or put in a ticket. And you can also download that admin guide separately so you can have reference to it even if your system happens to be offline while you're doing an upgrade or something like that. Does Bacon recognize if Microsoft Update includes prior updates that would be included? It does. And so in our history table, it creates what are called historicals. That's an official Microsoft metadata piece. So we know if you've already installed something that erases a need to get an older update, it will file that as historical. And it will also work with the system the DLL effectively that's right inside of Windows to do a lot of that calculation automatically. So it's a really, really easy to use system for that reason. Can Bacon issue an alert giving them the option to postpone? We do have a free download that can, what we call a nag screen. That's what that is. And we have people using that today. We are coming out with a more comprehensive one, but we do have that, yes. For third-party patching, will there be a notification implemented to allow users to delay reboots? Probably, although most third-party software doesn't require reboots by default. If you know of an example of some software that does, I'd be very interested to know about it, and we would look into how that would work. But there is certainly, with the existing NAG technology that we have, that we've made, which is just free download that you can have, it doesn't do that out of the box, but could be easily adapted to do that. And I think that's all of them. So with that, Dave, I'm going to close it out so we can leave the last 7 minutes for people to fill out the poll at the end and get their awesome Supersoft t-shirt. And with that, thank you all for attending and staying for the duration. We really, really appreciate it. Have a great one, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.